Okay. Okay. All right. So we are back again. I'm Bob Ponce, and my guests for this panel are Emma Chasen, who is a research scientist formerly with the Office of Cannabis Management, and Doctors Ken Weinberg and Lynn Parodneck, and though they are cannabis doctors, and we want to talk a little bit about the medical cannabis program in New York. Why do we have a program that was legalized in 2016 and here in 2024 only has less than 1% of the New York population actually using that program? So I'm going to start with Emma and ask you because you've been inside the LCM. You've worked on this very issue, so I think you have a lot to say on it.
Sure, yeah, thanks. So as a research scientist within the OCM, I was primarily tasked with supporting the medical cannabis program. So very kind of very aware of the incredibly complex challenges that we were facing from a programmatic standpoint. And I think when we talk about the problem of access, enrollment, certification with less than 1% of New York's population participating in the program, I think we have to look at historically how the program was designed in terms of being fairly restrictive. So, not having a kind of universal access in terms of conditions. So having a limited list of conditions that were then eligible for patients. I think that is a model that makes it difficult for kind of widespread adoption. In some other states, you'll see, like Oklahoma, for example, they have a very robust medical program because really anybody can become certified for medical cannabis. Of course, they have to meet with a practitioner. The practitioner has to certify. But when you have either no kind of limitations on what can be certified for or what condition has to be certified, or you have conditions such as anxiety or chronic pain on your qualified condition list, then you see a lot more enrollment from folks who are looking for access to cannabis without an adult use kind of 21 plus framework in place yet. So I think that was one issue that New York faced. Also, the limitations and restrictions in terms of product type before the MRTA, so not having whole flower was also a restriction, and I think a point of kind of limitation for folks who are looking for that type of product. And then just the limited geographic access. So, having only 11 registered organizations with, about 38 dispensaries, even if a patient was certified in rural New York, for example, and they got their medical cannabis certification, they had one of those, few qualifying conditions, if it took them 4 hours to get to a medical cannabis dispensary, then kind of what's the point? So all of those factors from a historical perspective and the way that the program was first kind of designed, I think contributed to that, lower enrollment that we've seen.
So have you seen OCM make progress on some of these areas?
Definitely. So, the MRTA not only legalized for adult use, but it also expanded the medical cannabis program. So now it is in the practitioner's clinical discretion to certify patients for any condition or symptom they deem eligible for medical cannabis. There's also a registered organization expansion plan in place to really bring on new registered organizations, to have them open up new medical cannabis dispensaries, especially in unserved and underserved areas of the state. There was an expansion of product types, so now whole flower is included in the medical cannabis program and in medical cannabis dispensaries. And then there are a lot of other issues that we think of, or that I thought about a lot, my team thought about a lot at the OCM, such as affordability and that kind of lens of access for patients, the lack of insurance coverage for medical cannabis. And these are issues where I felt, and oftentimes my team felt, like we wanted to move on it, we wanted to implement a solution, but being a government agency, we were restricted either by federal regulation, federal law, or by New York state law, so needing an action through the legislature, for example, to allow for insurance coverage, as a government agency, we couldn't really take a strong stance to push that through because that's not our place and not our role. So trying to find, innovative solutions to address those issues, but know that like all of us, all of the people that I worked with, and in my personal experience, there was a lot of commitment to, okay, how can we be creative to support patients, to support practitioners, and to support the continued success and growth of this program, even as adult use rolls out.
Now, did you think your area had enough resources, or could they got?
I mean, I think as a government agency, there are always limited resources and there are always going to be conflicting priorities. And especially because, we're civil servants, we work for the public. A large portion of the public right now wants to see adult use businesses be licensed and be stood up. And the adult use market has had a slow rollout here and it's been a pain point for a lot of people. And so the office is definitely, looking at licensing adult use businesses as a priority. And there's going to be a shifting of resources when the adult use program, needs those resources to kind of stand up. However, my team, it was small but mighty. I'd say my focus entirely was supporting the medical cannabis program, but I'm only one person, we're only a few people. And like I said, we came across these roadblocks of, well, how much can we do as a government agency? We want to accomplish these things like increasing access and increasing affordability, but are we really allowed to do so as a government agency? And if not, how can we create a workaround to, at least like move the needle a little bit, help it evolve?
How has it been getting the message across to cannabis consumers that medical cannabis is a thing? Especially a lot of the patients for medical cannabis, and I know this from talking to Lynn and Ken before, are older. And older patients many of them have a stigma around cannabis. Is that wacky weed, the devil's lettuce, whatever it was they were taught. So how does that messaging get across to let people know that there are these profound benefits for them without necessarily all the side effects that come with pharmaceutical solutions?
I think that's really, hello? Okay, great. I think that's really where the practitioners come in. And this is something that we thought about quite a bit is, okay, we not only need to educate the general public on why medical, why is it still important now that adult use is rolling out, but also how do we engage clinical audiences? So support our certifying practitioners who can certify patients for medical cannabis with education and resources and feeling like they have a voice in the program, feeling like they have access to OCM to be able to deliver us feedback, but then also how do we get in front of clinical audiences who really want nothing to do with cannabis or have no idea where to start. We received feedback from folks when we would try to reach out to hospital groups. Some of them would be very interested in hearing more, though cautious. Some of them would be like, I just don't care about that. And to me, that's quite a stopgap and pretty irresponsible from a clinical perspective when you have people who are going to have more access to cannabis than ever in New York State with adult use. Even if patients do not want to join the medical cannabis program, practitioners should definitely still be aware of cannabis and how to speak to patients about cannabis, how to look for signs of cannabis use disorder, how to look for an opportunity to maybe integrate cannabis into a treatment regimen. And I think that really helps to reduce the stigma. When we engage those clinical audiences, even those clinicians who have no interest in joining the medical cannabis program, but who at a patient's kind of primary care annual appointment can bring up cannabis or at least remove it from the intake form where it talks about drug use, right? So like just those little shifts, I think can help the older adult population, can help the marginalized populations, folks who have, been subject to disproportionate harm from the war on drugs, begin to feel a little bit more comfortable that cannabis is a therapeutic tool. It can be a therapeutic tool, especially if your doctor is willing to talk about it.
So, am I here? Yeah, there we go. So, Ken and Lynn, tell us about your experiences with some of your peers. Are you guys out on the island by yourself, or is there a growing number of doctors in New York who actually want to practice cannabis medicine?
Yes?
Yes.
Little by little, I mean, I've reached out to my colleagues all the time, and when I get patients who have come to me, I've had some patients who come to me and said, my doctor won't allow me to use it. Or my doctor tells me that a lot of my patients are pain management patients who have been on narcotics. And I had one patient who said, my doctor said it's illegal. I can't take cannabis and narcotics. And I said, quite the contrary. And please have your doctor get in touch with me because that's not true. And we wound up working it out. But it's really hard. I mean, to what Emma is saying, I think there are ways that the state could, and I think they may be starting with it. Every doctor has to take a pain management course, and I think they are starting to make that the whole cannabis education a part of that. But I think, again, and we've talked about this before, medical education is really the thing. We need to be reaching out to it. I said this before, 10% maybe of medical schools teach about the endocannabinoid system. Until that is improved, until that changes, it's hard.
It gets worse. Now that adult usage is here, I have patients coming in saying, my doctor says I don't need a certificate anymore. I can just go to the shop. I said, did your doctor tell you which shop to go to, what to purchase? Like, are they working with you on your outside shopping? No, they just said, well, I pay for a card when you could go to a shop. And then you have to get, as a physician, involved in explaining over the data, what they're telling you is not lab tested. How do you know what's in there? Or if they're walking around Manhattan and they happen to give me a call because, oh, they're stopping in a pot shop and they found this thing that looks so great. What do I know about it? I said, I know you need to leave and take your money and spend it at a licensed dispensary. That's step number one. So it's a mess.
So people are just going thinking weed is just this general thing, and whereas medical cannabis is really very specific strains, specific cannabinoids and terpenes to get specific outcomes related to specific health problems.
That's what it's supposed to be. Often seniors come in and they're like, I don't want to get stoned, don't make me high, I don't want to go there. I'm like, okay, and I explain what products I think would be appropriate, but you have to work with the patient. So I often start with like 19 CBD to 1 THC. We edge our way to 1 to 1, and then we get a nice result, and they're happy. And then they bring in their friends. When I first started this, Monday morning was my big phone call day. People would go out to dinner with their friends. They'd bring their products to dinner and show the table, and they'd say, oh, I got this from a doctor. And it was fun because they were curious, they wanted to make changes, and they were open to it. And that's what was really exciting about all this. And as physicians, we could see the changes that we were bringing to people. And that's pretty great. I did OBGYN in my past life, and that was fun. A lot of stress, but fun. With this, you can really make such a big change in a small amount of time. And as a doctor, that's really good. And you can't kill anybody. Cannabis, you can't overdose. Yeah, people can get too stoned, you can get into that. We don't have to worry about people stopping breathing and all this other stuff, like Ken was in the ER.
Right.
I mean, cannabis is a very forgiving medicine to work with. Somebody takes too much, they will recover. So it's such a nice tool.
Sure.
I just wanted to further to that a little bit, when we had sang here last week, I really applaud the fact that the OCM you need to see a pharmacist before you get started. And again, and some medical programs, so it's really precise and consistent. And I think that's very reassuring for patients. No, you're going to get an exact amount. If they say to Lynn, I don't want to get stoned, I say to them, you won't. You know, I can guarantee you'll start at very low doses, and it's going to be precise and consistent. So I think that.
And repeatable.
Yes. So I think that's really important.
Lynn, tell us about some of the success stories you've had with patients.
Well, I feel myself as a community-based practice. I'm in Bedford, New York, which is Westchester, and I have people coming from the Bronx, and I have people coming from Brewster or whatever. So I see all ages. It's not one size fits all. I'm very interested in working with patients with opioid issues and are willing to decrease the opioids and sub in some cannabis. To me, that's super fascinating, and you can make a big difference. So that field is great. Kids on the spectrum, you can give them a decent day. You're not going to get rid of the autism. It's something I need to make there is I look at cannabis as a solution. It's not a cure. It can help people. They get through their day. They can be a lot more productive. They can be a lot happier. So it becomes a tool. I've had a woman who was court ordered to be on Seroquel and Lamictal for over 20 years. The psychiatrist said she probably doesn't need it anymore. However, she was unwilling to lower doses and work with her to get off. She said, you find somebody to do that for you. So she found me. And what I did is I worked with a compounding pharmacy in Cross River, New York, and we decreased 15% a month. She didn't want any pains. She didn't want any electric zaps. She wanted to just feel good. So I met with her once a month. We go over what's going on and tweak the cannabis compounds she's using according to how she's feeling. She's got the best job now. She's teaching art in public high school in Yonkers. She's happy. She has a boyfriend, and she said she's never felt better. So to me, that's pretty critical.
Ken, you have any patient stories you'd like to share?
Well, one that immediately comes to mind that I really like. I have a patient who is a Hasidic Jew. His rabbi said it was okay for him to use cannabis. He has very bad Crohn's disease. And after a month or two of being on it, I did a follow-up, and he said, Dr. Weinberg, does THC give you wisdom? And I said, what a question. That just was fabulous to me. And I said, what do you mean? Well, I've been studying Talmud all my life, and there are all of these passages in Talmud that I've never understood. When I use my THC for my Crohn's, I get it. And it's not because I'm stoned. Because I talked to the Rebbe about it, I talked to my wife, I'm not hot, I'm in there. And, and that brings up, there's a whole long history of Judaism and cannabis, and, but I just thought that was such a...
Yes, yes.
All right.
No, I'm over here exploding when you say you're absolutely right about this, sir, 100%.
So, we're diverging a little bit, but I need to hear a little bit more about the long history of Judaism and cannabis.
Well, I've had a rabbi tell me that the burning bush was a cannabis bush.
That kind of makes sense.
I have read things, and again, I'm not a Talmudic scholar by any means, but I've been told that the rabbis for the first temple, the priests were supposed to be anointed with an oil made of cannabosin. And there was a BBC film crew that went to the Negev desert, and they found residue in one of the temples of cannabinoids there. So I think it's way interwoven, and I'm sure other members of the tribe here could, mention their own ideas about it. But it's fascinating to me. I wonder how deeply and how much a lot of the Talmud and the Bible and everything was written with people who were majorly influenced by cannabis.
All that writing sounds like. So, Jeffrey, you got excited about that. I think now might be a good time for us to call you up here to talk a little bit about what's going on in legislation in cannabis.
Heck yeah.
Plus, I just love when Jeffrey gets excited.
Woo! No, there's no question about this. The idea of psychedelics, not just cannabis, but psychedelics having influence on religion throughout history. Who are we kidding here? This is a whole show. You just got me so, I mean, just, Colin can tell you, as you were saying this, I was doing something else and melting down internally. You're so right. It's amazing. Some of the best ideas I've had and stuff I have done have been on cannabis. I mean, it's just this whole idea that people are dopey idiots when they're using these substances. Oxygen is a drug. We do pretty good on oxygen, right? Just everything has a different impact on you, and there's no question about that. Sorry to give you the things. I got so excited when I was here. This is great.
I think many of us had that same experience, that as opposed to spacing out and stoning out, we actually,
Which you can also do. There's nothing wrong with spacing out on a really pure indica, right? I mean, you can even find one of those anymore. But just there's so much more to it. All right, we want to talk about legislation?
Absolutely.
All right, so the most exciting one, and I was sort of tuned into this while I was trying to do some work over there, talk about the idea of the insurance companies reimbursing for medical cannabis. So there is a bill in the legislature right now. It is being championed by the majority leader, Ms. People-Stokes. It's interesting. This bill passed, basically the exact bill passed the Senate several times when Diane Savino, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, but she was the champion of this bill. She retired, so that there's no longer a champion in the Senate, but fortunately there's a champion in the Assembly. It's a very good one. The majority leader typically gets what the majority leader wants. We'll see if that happens. So there is a bill, and what basically the bill does is it allows any insurance provider to cover medical cannabis in the state. We know Aetna, etc. will not until it's federally legal. It does allow them to. However, there are state-funded insurance entities, and it requires them to, right? So they will get a huge number of signups, I imagine, the moment this bill passes, because you will advise all of your patients to sign up. I will be blasting this from the hills, so everybody's going to go sign up for this. And in fact, I think this is how you recapture, to your point, from the AU market. How do you recapture medical? Oh, you let all that money you're pouring into your health insurance every year come back to you in some way that actually benefits you, right? So I just think that's dynamite. The bill has a companion in the Senate. It has passed a couple of, or at least one committee in the Assembly. Again, the majority leader, I think, typically gets what she wants. Whether or not she can force it in the Senate is another issue. I don't think it'll be part of the budget, right? Like they have a budget bill that has that we're now late on, I think, but at some point we're going to need a budget bill here. I don't think it'll be part of that. But then there's a bunch of horse trading that happens in the legislature once we get a budget later in April, God forbid May, but at some point for the remainder of the session they have horse trading and we get it. So I think there's a real good chance that happens either this session or next session. We got the Assembly, I think we'll pass it. We just got to get the Senate now. We flipped which body we have to fight for. The other piece of legislation I'm really excited about is actually a bill I wrote. And we talked a little bit about the continuing medical education, what really needs to be done as far as that in the space. It was mentioned the pain management. There is a law on the books here in New York, and it exists that medical professionals must take CME about pain. If you're going to prescribe pain medication, you have to learn about the side effects and how much. I mean, you guys know much more than I do about what the rules are, but there literally is a law for that. So I took that and simply modified it for the endocannabinoid system in cannabis. As has been discussed here quite presciently, doctors are only going to see more cannabis, right? You're going to see patients in the ER presenting. You're going to have regular patients at their physicals now willing to say, hey, do you smoke? Well, doc, I don't smoke cigarettes, but I smoke a joint to sleep at night, or I eat a bunch of edibles, whatever. Doctors are going to be seeing this more and more and more and more and more. And to not have them educated about it and ready to deal with the patients that present with these issues and asking about it or speaking about it is a crime. It's a crime for us not to have that level of education in our medical providers. You want to talk about do no harm. How can you do no harm when you don't fundamentally understand what it is your patient is talking to you about? So I'm real big on that. I actually think it's going to be introduced. I have an assembly member that's introducing that bill. Should happen this week or next week. Nothing gets passed in its first year, but we'll see what happens.
So Emma, does that kind of dovetail with what you were talking about, that not just OCM, but we need all hands on deck approach to solving this?
Exactly. And actually, while I was still at OCM, read Jeffrey's bill, was working with DOH on how can we integrate cannabis into mandatory prescriber education for that kind of like pain management professional. And so it's something that we are so aware of. I was so aware of, my team was so aware of, we wanted to support, but that kind of government limitation that's in place where we need to have a separation, right? The agency is responsible for carrying out the law, but it's inappropriate, as I came to learn, for the agency to kind of like lobby a political position, right? But having somebody like Jeffrey who's out there and drafting these bills and working on this, and having our kind of like the OCM's intergovernmental people, also kind of speaking to the legislature, definitely huge issues that were very much on my team's radar and something that we absolutely support. I mean, in terms of like moving kind of the needle on cannabis education for providers, on arming providers with the essential tools to be able to at least have like well-informed conversations about cannabis with their patients. We need a formal educational requirement for these clinicians. And I believe from talking with a lot of clinicians that they want this education. I mean, even from a data-driven perspective, I conducted a survey of practitioners while at the OCM with the team, and I believe it was almost 75% wanted more cannabis education. They wanted access to resource and guidance from reputable sources, and so really exciting to hear about these, developments.
Now you mentioned integration with the Department of Health, which was where the medical cannabis program started. So do you guys still have what you consider to be a working relationship with the Department of Health?
Absolutely. And the Department of Health actually hired a few cannabis specialists, I'd say, within the agency. Within the Office of Drug User Health, there's a cannabis program manager who I had monthly meetings with. I was kind of in constant contact with. Worked right before I left OCM on this kind of issue of continuing medical education. And then there are also some research scientists at OCM that are looking at cannabis and cannabis programs, hospitalization rates, trying to figure out how to kind of evolve hospital billing codes for cannabis, because that's still a very kind of archaic place that doesn't really allow us to glean true insights on hospitalization rates for cannabis or cannabis use disorder and stuff like that. So definitely very much a kind of collaborative working relationship with DOH. And the former director of the medical cannabis program at DOH is the director of health and safety at OCM now, and she has such a love for the medical cannabis program, in my experience working there, and it's something that's so close to her heart to continue to just support and see grow.
Nicole Rose.
Yes, Nicole Rose. Great. Well, just hearing that our government agencies working together in any capacity is a wonderful thing. So I want to just do a quick lightning round of last comments. Lynn, what would you like to see that we're not seeing yet in our medical cannabis program?
I would love to see more profits. I'd love to see RSO. It would be great to have that as a tool. I would love to see sublingual slips.
Okay, what is RSO?
Rick Simpson.
Oh, right.
He was an advocacy person on skin cancer. It's very strong. Usually protocol is for about a month, but there's been evidence that glioblastoma multiforme responds. I had a patient who did a Rick Simpson protocol, the tumor day shrunk, and that's not supposed to happen. Usually these patients are told they have 6 months or less, they're ready to go. I have actually had 5 patients who worked with Rick Simpson oil and all got beyond the 2-year mark.
That's great.
So I'm praying for Rick Simpson oil. And then the slips are great. They're like little Listerine slips. They're wonderful for people who have to summer Parkinson's patients. They have, it's tongue. So if you could just put something on your tongue or under your tongue that didn't have greasy kind of feel. I don't like teachers. I was raised not to eat oil. So this is like anti-religious to me. You know, you get grilled cheese, you put the napkin on. So teacher to me is a whole other experience, but it's helpful and it works. Also, the sprays. Why is the Etane spray the only one out there? You pull back your cheek when you spray. So I would love to see these things available. Also, it would be wonderful if you could do custom formulation. Seniors have trouble with opening tincture, doing the drops. I mean, I have people who more goes in the trash than in their body. How about we could come up with, Ken and I know what's gonna work for these people. Why can't we order, you'd be ready, you know, like within a week, be able to get custom formulations? So these are my wishes.
Okay. Ken, what's on your wishes?
Well, I'll just throw one quick one out, suppositories, which were out there, and Columbia Care had them. We were trying to do a study at Northville, actually, for pelvic floor dysfunction, things like that. And because of, you know, the politics, it just took too long. So that's one thing. But more important, and Dave Holland and I were talking about this last week, we have a huge population of seniors with dementia and other issues that are in all the senior living facilities in New York. There's only one that I've been able to get into, and I found out that the reason is because of liability. These places are very concerned about liability. They don't want to give their patients cannabis, they're afraid, and I think that's something that Dave and I are going to be working on. Jeff, I don't know if you have any thoughts about it, but you know, the issue is that they understand that cannabis could really be helpful, and they're afraid that if the patient falls or something happens, that this facility is going to be liable for it.
Emma, what's on your wish list?
Ooh, I think affordability, access, and education are kind of my big three. So insurance coverage, reimbursement for medical cannabis products for patients, seeing OCM and the board establish some kind of definition of affordability and holding the ROs to that. So holding the ROs accountable for having a certain percentage of inventory that is affordable, and then being able to kind of like move that needle as the market moves, I think would be a really cool initiative. I also think that establishing some type of reimbursement or fund for medical cannabis patients, like a stipend, there's something similar to that happens in Pennsylvania, where qualifying medical cannabis patients of low income status receive, I believe, like a $50 stipend towards their medical cannabis. I think that would be a really cool initiative. Seeing more medical cannabis dispensaries with more product formulations and product types, which that's a call out to the registered organizations to make sure that they can be producing a product that medical cannabis patients need and want in areas that have been historically underrepresented, and then more education for our clinicians through CME requirements, and through the creation of just more resources and opportunity for clinical audiences to have to pay attention to the fact that cannabis is happening.
Jeff, do you have any wish list?
Yeah, I do have a wish list. Usually in my general comments, I talk about legislation as like things we're actually working on and I think can happen. At the end, I like to say things that I don't think can happen, but that I would love to have happen. Every news article I read about cannabis talks about, well, we don't know this because we can't do any studies, and we don't know this because we don't know any studies. We don't really know if it does this thing because we can't do any studies. And I just think it would be neat if New York, the big state, big budgets. I mean, the budget here is like $7 quadrillion. I think it's like $215 million is going to be the state budget or whatever. Like, I get it. If you're a university, you can't study cannabis because you're going to risk your federal grants. Can we in New York figure out some way that it's not through Syracuse, University of Syracuse or Syracuse, I don't know, whatever, but some kind of entity that is purely state funded? Like, let's lead on this. Let's put together something where people can actually do the clinical trial I frankly want is let's find whose flower is the best for music. And I get that's not a health thing, but you can do all your health things too, but we all get music is better on cannabis. And I want to do in the future these things that I call listenings, where we play the orb or Miles Davis at incredible volume levels, and we're all unbelievably high on whatever strain has been identified as the strain that is just the best for music when you're high. And I get it. Then we're going to figure out what is the best for tumor reduction, what is the best for, I don't know what, you guys know, like, conditions we're going to do this for, but, like, can we in New York, like, figure out a way, it doesn't have to be a lot of money. Like, let's figure out how we can really do skunk work. Let's be really entrepreneurial. How for millions or at most 8 figures, a few 10 millions of dollars, we can really get some studies, that can be used in these news articles that I see all the time. And we can't tell if it really does tumor because nobody can do a test. Let's lead on that. And I don't know that we can really do it. I just think it's something we ought to think about.
And my last but not least, I have a wish list. It's close to Jeff's. It might not sound the same way, but my wish list is for New York State to come up with a research entity or institute solely focused on cannabis medicine research, with the goal of making New York the world centerpiece of cannabis medicine research, or at least, we may have to catch up to be in the world, but we could be the leader in the U.S. And with the idea that the breakthroughs that are going to come in the next 10 years from the combination of cannabis medicine, AI used to parse the results of cannabis medicine, we're going to see breakthroughs in medicine that we have not seen in the last several decades. So that's my wish. So with that, we're going to take a 5-minute break. And after that, we're going to come back and we're going to get into everybody's favorite subject. What in the world is going on with the marketing regulations for cannabis in New York State? So stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, we are back, and I'm pleased to have as my guest Colin Decker, who is the founder of 7Cs. 7Cs is the first legacy to legal brand in New York State, and he's also he has a consulting firm as well. And safe to say you know a little bit about this business.
Yeah, I would say.
Try to do.
Well, it's safe to say that that's definitely the case.
So, one of your pet peeves right now, especially as you're trying to get your business up and going in this new industry, is the handcuffs on you, the marketing restrictions that are in place from OCM. So tell us a little bit about some of the problems you've been
Yeah, certainly from my side, there's certain regulations that we have to follow in terms of being a brand and operating in the structure of the industry. And what we've noticed as well is, we look at this as a family. We're all one big family. It has to be symbiotic, the relationship between the brands, the cultivators, the processors, the retailers, the distributors, everyone. Because if one side only does good, the other doesn't flourish. And we all need it to be symbiotic. And so for us, the marketing restrictions are definitely there. And they're even more so for the retailers. And this product that we have here, adult use cannabis, we call it now, is legal. You can smoke it on the street, you can be out there, same as a cigarette, anything like that. But yet we can't advertise this product the same as we can out. And both are 21 and above products. These are age-gated restricted products. So when I can walk into a grocery store, if I had a kid with me, if I had a child with me, there's no security guard at the door. And that child can wander off to the alcohol aisle and grab a can of beer out of the six-pack. Hopefully somebody catches the kid, But at the same time, going into a dispensary, you're immediately brought on by security and age verification right away. Understandably so. But we're treating alcohol so much more lackadaisical, and that it's not something that should be as restricted for marketing. It's on every billboard. Every subway car has an ad for vodka or for a liquor product. Every alcohol product at the liquor store, on every street, neon signs in the windows, and I can look right through the glass and see all the bottles lit up on the wall. Every bar, I can look into and see people consuming the product. But for a cannabis dispensary, we have to have what they call blacked out windows. They have to be smoked out, only one way, visibly seen through. It's from the inside out in case they get held hostage. You can see out, but you can't see in. It's something that we haven't thought about here is how a lot of these issues where we're demonizing the fact that it's now legal still. And I find these to be very appalling.
So yeah, not having visibility in the window seems to be, that's like store merchandising 101.
Yeah.
To be able to see what your products are.
Think about Macy's at Christmas time. Think about Macy's. If they couldn't do their displays every year on Fifth Avenue, which they're known for, right? If Macy's couldn't do that, how much would their sales go down? And we've got these dispensaries that are putting in millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars into building it out. But what? They can't advertise and have more but 2 signs, and the sign is restricted to only being the name of the store. It can't even have the logo of the store in the sign itself.
What sense does it make to not have the logo in the sign?
I don't understand it. I mean, what my feeling from all of it is like they want to have the most plain, like the plain look to everything, right? They want it to be just so tame that anybody could go into any store. That's not what business is. You don't restrict the capability and possibility of the entrepreneur and their passion or their ideas. The creation, the giving birth of that idea, the creation to the store itself is a massive undertaking. And then to stifle that creativity only hurts the retailer, the brands that sell to the retailer, and the consumer Because we have to remember, Bob, they didn't legalize this because they care about the plant or us, people that care about it passionately. They legalized it because they love the tax money. That was the only reason they did it. It wasn't because they cared about all this other. No. They did it because they wanted the tax dollar. Well, wouldn't you want to make more tax dollars then? Wouldn't you want to sell more products, sell more weed, get more people smoking it, and bring in that tax money? Well, we can't advertise. You know, it goes back, I think of Massachusetts as a good example. In the beginning, they couldn't have billboards. It was against the regulatory statute. Then the retailer said, we're gonna do billboards. And so they got their money together, and they went out and put out billboards. And then the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Board had to go back and change the regulation to allow billboards, but only under certain conditions. And we're seeing that happen now. We were seeing billboards in Syracuse and New York being put up. With Livingstone, he's running billboards. I'm seeing them in Albany, New York, in certain stores. They are out there, and people are going against the regulation law because they see it as we're generating this much tax revenue from the state. What are they going to do? They're going to stop us from making them more money? So that's just one of the few things that we're seeing problems.
And with the proliferation of unlicensed stores, how does that affect you? Because the unlicensed stores is not a problem for them.
That's correct. I mean, when I walk down the streets of New York City, I'll be right outside the doors of where we are right now. There's an ambulance converted into a cannabis dispensary. Right. It's right out front. Yes, exactly. I just took a photo of it before that. You know, they're selling indoor flower out of the converted ambulance, and then right across the street we've got empire. You know, and these are both two unlicensed entities operating within the state. Everywhere I go across the city, I'm asked. I ask myself, wow, you know, are we ever going to see the tides change here? You know, with more licensed dispensaries coming in than the unlicensed. I had a nice couple actually come up to me from France when I was just outside on the street, and they said to me, well, where do we buy something? Where do we buy cannabis? I said, well, you want a license? Well, what does that mean? I said, well, that's somebody who's been approved by the state to sell products that are tested by a laboratory to show that what you're going to ingest is actually safe. Well, where do we go for that? And as somebody in this industry who sells to over 60 stores, I had to stop and think, well, where can I send them? And I had to pull up on my phone. I went to the OCM website, dispensary verification tool, that's the page, and I got right off of it because it didn't help me. Because there's nothing to plug into there to where how close you are to something else and have it tell you where to go. It just gives you a list. So I went to Google, and I went on Google right away, dispensary near me. And it pulled up two locations, and the closest was Dagmar Cannabis at 412 West Broadway. And I said, you know what, that's a family-owned business. They're the closest, it's licensed. Why don't you folks go to Dagmar and try it? And that's the best that I could do. But I'm doing the OCS job on the street. Right. You know, and to me, that just happened. You know, so imagine being someone from out of town, going into New York City and seeing all these storefronts that aren't licensed, Bob, that have neon signs and cannabis leaves lit up, and we're talking deals, you know. They can market, and they're putting sandwich boards out there. I've been tricked once or twice before thinking, well, it's a real store myself, and about to send them a message and say, hey, I'd love to sell to you guys. Wait, you're not real. They're getting real good at it. And nobody's saying or cracking down on this in any way. You could put up a sticker on the window that says illegal product is seized here. But you know what they do? They go and get a nice fake sticker or something else and cover it right up.
I saw one shop. They had the sticker up, and the next day they had balloons covering it.
They get caught on a Friday, they're slinging on a Saturday morning.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Absolutely.
So that's part of the problem is just being heard about the noise of these unlicensed dispensaries. And it seems like these marketing regulations, at the very least, there should be a very accessible online directory where people just go by, here's where to buy weed in New York State.
Yeah, and some third-party people are taking on that task and putting together those directories. I mean, on our website alone on 7seasco.com, you have the retailer locator that I built myself, and that tells you where every single real store is in New York that we personally sell products to. So if you want to go to check them out, you put in where you are, and it'll tell you where the closest one is. Now, if I was able to do that, and I'm not a multi-million-dollar funded agency, you would think the OCM could have tackled that. But, one thing I want to point out too is for these regulations, and Jeffrey's made it very known many times publicly, right now, the only places we can compliantly advertise are in a strip club, or in a nightclub, or in a bar. And
Casino.
And a casino, where it's age gated at 21 and up. Now, does that help your consumer base find you?
So you can't advertise online, or you can't advertise radio, or newspaper, or any of those things?
So it is into the regulations for New York that you could do a billboard hypothetically, but you have to prove that over 90% of the target audience is going to be 21 years old.
No billboard.
No billboard.
Online, you have to show 21 plus. Other place, you have to show 21 plus. Billboard out.
Oh, so no billboard. I was right.
So online 21 plus, so that just like you have to go through the gate and say, I am 21 plus?
You have to take that at the face value, right?
Right.
And then also you're required to have to put all these disclaimers with your advertisement online. Now, is anybody doing that? No. Nobody's doing that. We should entrust into our businesses to be able to operate a business as the professionals that they are, as the entrepreneurs that they are. Why are we not allowing them to have the same opportunities as many other different industries and businesses that are just as heavily regulated, if not more? All right. And so to me, that it breaks my heart in a sense, and it also hurts my family's bottom line, because if we were able to advertise alongside these stores in the way that we should, like other states allow, and we look at California, 7+ years now, and it hasn't burned down the city yet with all the earthquakes and everything still happening. The youth isn't corrupted. I was just in LA not too long ago, and I only saw one billboard that was classier than any liquor address. And there's a way to conduct business, and I think further stigmatizing this completely goes against the mission of the MRT. We need to do a better job at understanding what the nuances are for both sides of business, the supplier and the retailer, because that's why the two-tier system was created, right? Axel used to speak on it very, very loudly before he left for a better position simply. But looking at the two-tier, I can't be involved in a dispensary if I'm on the supply side, and vice versa. So why is it that we can't both have our own marketing, abilities, even to some certain extent, that further grants us that access to the consumer? Because Instagram and LinkedIn and all these other things only go so far. And if there's a store located in Brooklyn that sees thousands of people a day down the sidewalk, it should damn well be able to advertise loud and proudly that it's selling licensed legal cannabis, and that there's some specials for Friday afternoon.
Oh, let's talk about specials and discounts and those things. So none of that stuff is available?
So per the regulation, people are getting around all these things where you're and Jeffrey would definitely be able to touch on that too, is as far as having rewards programs. You're only allowed to do certain things with that. You can't have, customer discounts. You can't give preferential treatment to customers and this and that. I mean, it's all very vague.
What does it solve? That's what I don't understand.
No, there's no solving to that problem. It creates further problems. Because now you have to figure out, well, how can I skirt the law and get around this and go in a different direction? And then you could possibly get yourself into further trouble. The key to cannabis in a legal sense, and I preach this all the time, is compliance. Because if you're not compliant, you're up against fines, you're up against owing money. Your business lives or dies by your compliance. Because that's the whole point of being legal. is so that you follow a compliant regulatory structure that speaks to your ability to follow that compliance to the T. Otherwise, we should all just be doing what everybody else is doing out there. And when I walked away from Legacy, that was the whole mindset was, all right, we're going legal, we're staying legal. I'm not.
So tell us a little bit
tiptoeing.
about your history.
Yeah, so for 16 years, I was a legacy cultivator commercially in the Hudson Valley region of upstate New York. I operated in the gray market, we like to call it, where I cultivated commercially large scale amounts of cannabis. And there was no legal market for all those years. Medical was only brought in and allowed to be accessed by the multi-million-dollar typically out-of-state investments. So for us, we had a consumer base. We helped a lot of patients that would now be considered medical patients. Those who were terminally ill, those who were suffering from ailments and cancer and things. They turned to us for safe access, knowing that the plant that we cultivated was done so in a full top-tier professional manner, and with a conscience, and with care and love into it. And so in operating for all those years, you learn a lot about the industry on that side, and about the plant, and about people. And when the MRTA was passed, I walked away from Legacy and started the 17th Premium Cannabis brand. Legacy, I never had a brand, that was just known as me, you know, and your bond was your word. And I think we could bring a lot of these attributes into the legal market that we had in Legacy, where there was your word was your bond, and if you were a stand-up guy or girl, you were standing up, and there was respect to that. And I think nowadays a lot of people are coming into it for the green rush, for the money. But for us, it was, we're going to transition as a family brand. It's run by myself, my mom, my girlfriend. We're the biggest supporters I could have, alongside Jeffrey, longtime friend and attorney of the brand, and myself. And so, you know, Dad was a huge supporter of it too. We lost him to cancer a few months ago. I lost my brother to it as well, you know, and they didn't get to see me do the full circle transition from Legacy to legal. But I'm doing this for my family, and I'm doing this also to pave the path for everybody else that wants to come into this market and transition to legal, because it's possible. It's not the easiest. It's a lot more difficult in a regulatory compliant way, but it's possible.
Right.
And so we came out with the brand, and we came out swinging, and we've been hitting hard and heavy ever since. I'm blessed and grateful for the opportunity, but I've not held back in speaking the truth on all these issues that we're seeing.
Right, because you're literally the poster for what is supposed to happen, for us to be able to create that bridge for Legacy to be able to come out, operate as a full tax-paying member, that's supporting the industry, and you ought to be able to, make a healthy living and make a profit out of your business.
Yes, absolutely. You know, for me, I do this for my family and my passion for the plant. Mom started me growing it at 13. My first season was smoking from Amsterdam in the shaving, by a family friend who was Dutch. And at 13, I started growing the plant, and Mom instilled in me from the very beginning that this is medicine. Mom was a dancing bear. She followed the Grateful Dead for many years and was a free spirit. And my father was a 50-year Union Steamfitter. And so 2 different walks of life. Dad having been a rebel and an outlaw back in the 60s, but then going straight to be a family man, and Mom always keeping that rebellious, hippie spirit to her. Mom blessed me with that, and so I've had a respect and deep understanding of the plant since a young age. Coming into this, absolutely, like you said, this is supposed to be, this is what they were selling the bill of goods on.
Yes.
Is that if you had a record and you qualified for card, you could get a license, and this would right the wrongs of the war on drugs, right? But how are we righting the wrongs? By continuing to further stigmatize and demonize the retailers and the operators who are paying the healthy taxes, abiding by the regulatory statutes, jumping through every hoop they put us through, and we just say, how high? And we don't question it. How is this helping everyone? We need to create those solutions and have people in the OCM listen, because I've said it and I've even written it publicly. I truly do not believe that anybody who's had experiences like myself, their voice has been brought into a conversation in terms of drafting things or figuring out this market. I believe consultants were paid from other markets and other capacities, but have we had real operators brought into the conversation to sit around the table and say, this is what my life is because you're affecting my life now and my family. You're taking food out of my family's mouth. You're hurting everything that we've worked for. And I would love to be able to, I think about it all the time. I would love to put an ad out for 7 Cs in Times Square. I'd love to do that. That'd be a dream come true. Even for 10 seconds, you just see, ride the wave, 7 Cs or something. How cool. But I can't do that. But it's okay for vodka and Smirnoff and every other liquor company to advertise on every subway that I'm on. Just pepper me with ads everywhere I go, telling me to consume and buy this. But that kills people. But the thing that I'm selling is one of the best products on the market. It's gonna get you high as hell. You're gonna enjoy it, and it's gonna make you feel great. It's gonna ease some of your ailments, if not all of them. But I can't tell anybody about it. And I've gotten really creative with my way of marketing and how I've done things, and I get compliments from even people that are well to do in the PR sector of cannabis. And for me, it had to have come naturally because it was live or die. And so for me, I've gotten very creative with it, and I'm just blessed with that. But that's not the case for everybody. And I want to see the small farmers survive, and I want to see them have the opportunity to have a living. Because this plant fed my family for 18 years now. That should be the case for others who want to take that leap of faith. We shouldn't be hindering anybody's potential here. We should be accelerating it and stimulating that potential. That's what I want.
So we're looking 5 years ahead into the future, and you had your wish list. What would the New York cannabis market look like?
I want the market to be a place where no matter what, you didn't have $10 in your pocket or $1 million. There'd be a pathway for you to be a part of it. No matter where you come from, whatever your background is. Because chasing a dream should never be stifled for any person anywhere. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see there be incubator programs where somebody can come in off the street and learn how to be a bud tender if that's what they want to do. Same way they can go to bartending school and learn how to be a mixologist and make a drink. You should be able to learn about the differences and nuances in cannabis and recommend those products to consumers. If that is what you derive joy from and pleasure. I'd love to see a market where we see innovation and creativity in the product allotments that are allowed to be purchased. Right now, it's a very boring market. And I have people say, just wait, give it time. I get that. But at the same time, creativity doesn't wait. And so a lot of the reasons why we don't see as creative products out there right now are also due to the regulatory statutes that are in place. We're seeing restrictions. I mean, we have a 10 milligram THC cap per piece on an edible. If you've got a 100 milligram total limit, that can be on any edible, and it's got 10 pieces in it that are scored or individually separated per the rule. You're only allowed to have a 10 milligram dosage. Now in California, you've got products that are way higher than that, and it breeds creativity and how they're either ingested or what they're made of or the potency. But that's one thing. That's one small, wrench in the gears here. So I'd love to see creativity in the market. I'd love to see unique products, pathways for people to enter into this and build a life doing it. I would love to see way better genetics that are being grown that lead to better end products. That's something we're very passionate about. And working with a family of mine at Ziploc Seeds, we're doing that. All of our unique genetics are now being grown. We just signed a huge partnership deal with Edward Pura in Hudson Valley, a women-owned company. And they're going to be growing all of our genetics now, manufacturing our products. We'll be working hand in hand with them to do so, and I'm super excited about that. Great people over there, as well as Highline Brains, their distribution service. And so those genetics we're bringing in are just so unique, and that's something I'm so proud of. That's different. Because so many things out there right now are the same thing over and over and over.
Right.
And consumers get tired of that. The same way that they don't drink Pabst Blue Ribbon every day.
Yeah.
And I'd love to see more women get into this industry and be a part of it. Because like I said, I got started by my mom. And I know that it doesn't matter what your background is or who you are. You should be able to be a part of this. And I'd love to see that. My girlfriend's super supportive of the brand, and she's brilliant with what she's doing as well, and going to be working with 7 Cs. So I want to support all walks of life, no matter who you are. Those are some good things.
And do you think the New York market of legacy growers, do they have that kind of creativity that you're talking about?
I'd say absolutely. Being legacy meant a lot of things. Now, this was just a term that was made up a few years ago.
Right.
We were known as outlaws.
Right.
Now, I called myself an outlaw, or we were doing illegal things, but I prefer the term outlaw because I was somebody who just operated outside of your laws. I didn't agree with them, but I didn't hurt anybody.
Right.
We just operated outside of the law of growing the plant. That to me is the most beautiful plant in existence. It truly is. So for legacy, this term came around to categorize us and kind of put us in a box because they didn't know what else to call us. So they were like, we're going to call you legacy. But what is the legacy? And it's a term even I've been vocal about not really loving, because a legacy is something that you leave behind you're so proud of. Well, I'm not really proud of getting my ass beat by police and running down the street with pounds of weed in my hands in the middle of the night, trying not to get robbed and shot and everything else. And I've been chased by canines. Very proudly outran every German Shepherd that chased after my ass. Very proudly, I say that. My mom can attest to this. I'm quick. I've run up out my Nikes multiple times, and I have the proof of it. All right, so
Didn't drop the bag.
Didn't drop the bag. Made it through the woods, the whole thing. They lost my set going across the river. I know how to do it. So, I've been through it. I've been chased by helicopters before. We grew what we call guerrilla style outdoors. In the spring and summer, we plant large fields of plants, and I can hear helicopters coming from a very far distance, unlike many people. I know the hum of a rotor, the sound, I know it. Because these are things you learn by having to live in prohibition. But I never gave up on it. So to me, when I think of legacy, it's not the most proud thing that I left behind because of the shit that I went through, but it's the memories that I have and that I never gave up on the plan. That to me is legacy. If you never gave up on the plan, you risk being locked up and put away in the 10 by 10. You risk being away from your family. All this, you didn't do it for the glitz and glamour of it. For us, it was to help the people and provide access to the plan was something we were absolutely 110% committed to. So that to me is legacy. So if they want to put the term on it, sure, I'm going to carry the torch for it because I was the first to do it. And I was the first to take that leap and go after it. And we did it with pride. And we bring, like you asked me, with legacy, do you think that those cultivators have this unique product? Yes, I do. Because they think outside the box. Because they've had to their whole existence in order to survive as legacy. And I'm excited to see what they bring to micro businesses or tier 1 or tier 2. I'm excited because the best to come hasn't come yet. The best is yet to come.
So it comes back to, and I heard you talking about this earlier, we have to have a New York-based industry, and we have to support that. Meaning the creativity needs to come from here. We can't allow out-of-state operators with deep pockets to come in and try to bring a plain vanilla version of a product in there and just push it through mass distribution. We really need to literally cultivate the businesses that cultivate the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Jeffrey is listening. First thing he's going to say is, well, dormant commerce clause, we can't prevent anybody from coming into the state. We already went through that with Harrison, right?
Right.
Of course.
Right.
But, and like you're saying, though, why are we, this is the breeding ground of creativity.
Right.
If you can make it here,
Right.
make it anywhere.
Exactly.
They said.
Right.
So if we can allow that creativity to be flourished in New York and support those New York businesses, why not? this is New York after all. Everybody else had their turn in other states too, right? And I'm not against people working in multiple states. I plan on bringing 7 Cs all the way. I want to, because I want the world to see it. But as somebody who's from New York, where my heart and soul has been in children, where I suffered under prohibition in the years, I would love to see everybody else have that opportunity too, if not first, to be able to create something here that's New York born and bred. I'd love to see that, and I think the consumers would love to see that. It's just like everybody that goes upstate to go apple picking and pumpkin picking during the fall season, they don't go to Connecticut to do it. They go upstate to New York to do it, because we got the best apples and some of the best pumpkins. And it's the experience. And I think that's what we need to do here. We don't always have to sell a product. We sell the experience. And I think the New York experience is one you can't put a price tag on always. It's something you have to experience for yourself.
So we've been talking with Colin Decker, founder of 7 Cs, that's the number 7, SEAZ. Check him out. And we wish you all the best with your business. Thank you for sharing your story, sharing your insights and experience. We will have you back on you're now a friend of the podcast.
I can't wait, Bob. Thank you.
Yeah. So this has been the empCannabis podcast. We're trying to be a solutions-oriented place to have the big conversations that need to be had, talk about the things that need to be talked about, and hopefully be heard by the people who are making decisions on where to make the pivots right now so that we can have the industry that everybody wants to have in New York, where the business is too big for everybody to not be able to make money, but we have to do certain things in a certain way so that all the participants can thrive. So I'm Bob Ponce, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.